Good witch, bad bitch, moon's out riding dirty on a broomstick. Crystals on our neck so you can't touch this, leaving all the energy that we don't fuck with.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Good Witch, Bad Bitch. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing good. Today I'm going to talk about a little bit of a story time, kind of mixed in with some advice, and that is how to trust your intuition, particularly when it maybe doesn't make sense. I kind of have like a bit of a like life update, I guess, story time about how I decided it was time to leave LA and move back home. And that was a decision that was A, very hard, and B, like kind of didn't make sense. But I was receiving a lot of, messages and symbolism, and I was like, it feels like this is what I'm supposed to do, but it just doesn't make sense. And so that can be a really hard thing. And I think like everyone is going to go through that. And I think a lot of times the thing we're supposed to do doesn't make sense. And, spiritual messages and like spiritual wisdom, oftentimes it doesn't make sense. And it's there to lead you in a better direction that, maybe you wouldn't have before. I feel like I'm rambly already. I do not have an outline for this, so I'm just gonna kind of chat with you guys and talk to you about, my story. So if you're new here, welcome. My name's LunaSeranova. I'm a witch, an actress, an artist, a YouTuber, a tarot reader, astrologer, and I just wrote a freaking book. Okay, queen, slay. I wrote my debut poetry book, Dark Moon, New Moon. It is going to be a month old on July 4th. So by the time you guys hear this, it'll be a month old. So go celebrate it. Go get yourself a copy if you don't already. Leave it a review if you've read it. Share my stories about it because it's been so fun to tap into this more mercurial energy and like start my new era as an author. So, and I'm writing a fantasy novel that I'm so excited to get back into because, for the past for the past 4 months, I guess, I was so focused on getting the book ready and, I was self-published, so I had to, worry about the cover art, the formatting, the marketing, everything like that. So been very focused on the poetry book, and now that she's kind of her own thing, I'm gonna have time to get back to my current work in progress, which is a romance fantasy novel that I'm very excited about. So yeah, let's jump into it. So a little bit of background. So I've always been an actress. I started acting when I was like 12, and just always was like, yeah, I want to be a YouTuber / actress / model / singer. Like I've just always wanted to be an entertainer. That's always been a huge part of who I am, and just it's just a very intrinsic part of me. So I always knew I wanted to do that. So I did theater all throughout high school. I went to college for theater performance, and did a couple of local movies in Kansas while I was in college. And when I graduated, most people were moving to Chicago because that's pretty close and a pretty good hub for theater specifically, but also film. People were moving to Atlanta, which is really growing, and film at the time was really, really starting to pop off. New York for those who were more musical theater or theater. But I knew I wanted to do film and television. And so I moved to Los Angeles, and it was crazy. And, a lot of manifestation went into it. And I do want to say, like, I think that we have kind of a belief in our society about what it means for something to work out. And I think some folks would probably say that it didn't work out in LA, blah, 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 blah. But I do think it worked out in LA, and I think that I did what I needed to do there, and I think it set me up for success. And I don't view it as like a failed mission because it just wasn't meant to be where I stayed forever, and maybe I'll go back, and I'm open to that. But, I think it's important just to remind yourself that, like, success looks really different, and, an adventure can be successful even if you don't end up making that your forever home or whatever. So anyway, I decided to move to LA, did a lot of manifesting. It ended up working out really well, really serendipitously, where my husband got a job, and so we were able to, like, get a good place. Well, a good place. A place. Anybody in California, anybody in LA knows, like, the fucking cost of rent is outrageous. And then I went there and I drove cross country, and it was so beautiful. And I have, like, a moving vlog on YouTube if you're curious about that adventure. And yeah, and so I think, like, for the first year it was just kind of settling in, and then the second year was when I started to get a lot of messages that it was, like, time to leave, which obviously makes no sense. Like, I'm like, I just got here. What do you mean? Like, I just got here. And obviously what I want to do with my life that's, like, a great place to be, right? So, it was confusing. And I think most of us, even those of us who, like, have been in the spiritual realm for a long time, like, we still doubt those messages. And I think it's good. I think it's okay to, like, question, like, let it simmer in your skillet for a little bit, don't get your first message of, like, you need to leave and just bounce, right? I think it's understandable to want to do a couple tarot readings, really look for symbolism, like, give yourself time to make sure, especially with something that big, like, give yourself time to make sure that is, honestly what you want to do and think you're supposed to do. So, I'm not the type to ever, like, do a huge decision on one tarot reading, right? So one thing that was kind of funny was, like, numerology. I always like looking at the numerology of places I live, so, like, the address or the apartment number or whatever. And so the first place we went to, what kind of, summed down to a numerology 9. So I was like, okay, cool. So, like, the next place we go to, that'll be our forever home, or, like, our home for a while. It'll be a number 1, and some of you might think this is crazy, but I swear to God, you guys, it is so crazy the way it works. And the numerology of your address or your apartment number will really tell you, kind of inform the energy of your stay there. So so it was a 9. So I was like, okay, that's, like, the end of the cycle, wrapping things up. So I was like, okay, cool. First year here is a 9. We're gonna get our feet into the water, figure it out, whatever. And the place we ended up staying next, it's so funny. It was a back house, so the number was 1/2, which is so funny. Bitch, it was 9.5. I really thought it was gonna be 1, and then we get in, it's 9.5, and I'm like, that feels weird. This is supposed to be where we're gonna stay for the next, like, 5 years. Like, that's weird. I didn't think too much of it. I was like, okay, interesting. Looking back now, it's, like, funny because it was, like, 9, and then I didn't leave, and the universe was like, okay, bitch, 9 3/4. Like the universe was, like, telling me, and I was just like, I mean, I wasn't ignoring it. I was just kind of like, okay, we'll keep that on wraps. Like, we'll think about that. We'll let that simmer. And, like, I don't know if I have necessarily exact, examples of other things, but, like, tarot readings, just, like, general feelings, general vibes, things not necessarily going right, like, things kind of, just difficulty settling in, difficulty finding community, even with, like, working really hard to find that community, right? So it wasn't like I wasn't doing anything, and same with my husband. And that was kind of the thing that really confused me, because I'm very much an introvert. I love being alone. I love having my close friends that I've had for years and my husband, and, like, those are my people, and, like, I don't really need anybody else. that's obviously not 100% true, but you know, I'm not somebody who like needs to go out and be social. Like that shit drains me. But my husband's the opposite. He's an extrovert for sure. And he's really good at making friends. He's very charismatic. He's very funny. He's just like an all around great, fun guy. And like always makes friends wherever he goes. Okay, Leo energy. And was having a really hard time making friends and like didn't love his job and stuff. So both of us were having like resistance with this place. And, you know, that was something that we were mindful of for sure. And the next thing that happened was like the first time I was like, oh fucking K. Because as you know, if you've done this before where you've like gotten some symbolism, gotten some messages and kind of like let it sit and not really explore it more, the universe will start sending you crazier and crazier messages. So I'm going to make a whole podcast episode on this experience because it was so crazy. And I'm smiling now, but I was not smiling then. And I don't even think I've talked about this on here. So this is like news to you guys. Twice, a bird died on our front porch. And that's never happened to me before. I previously was not the kind of person who would encounter a lot of dead animals. I talked with some of my witchy friends and some of them were like, oh yeah, that's normal for me. Like, you know, I work with the underworld deities and I think that a lot of animals die in front of me so I can give them a good burial and respect them and stuff. And I'm like, I love that. That's beautiful. I don't think that was the case for me because this had never happened before. Like I was not somebody who had a lot of experiences with animals dying in front of me. And so the first encounter was in the last summer that I was in LA. And it was like family was over. I was in my living room. We had a big window in our living room. And it was just me and my husband in the living room. And we hear this loud thump on our outside wall. My husband actually was looking outside. He was looking out of the window. We were just talking. I was not facing the window. But I saw his face, like his jaw drop. And I was like, what? And I heard the thump too. And I looked and a fucking crow, which, mind you, we had created a relationship with these crows. We were like feeding them and like, cause we had a lot of crows in our, in that area. And so we were feeding them. We had a little crow altar. We were like actively making friends with them. And this crow had flew into our, not even the window, but the outside exterior wall of our front like house, of our house, you know, essentially the exterior of the living room, flew into it and then was like laying in the grass and died. And I was honestly like, I was like about to throw up. I was so upset because I love crows. I love animals. And I had like built a relationship with these crows. And that might sound silly to some of you, but like I was really, really upset and I had never experienced that before. Like I'd had pets die before, but it was kind of like they were sick or we knew it was going to happen. I'd never experienced an animal dying in front of me out of accident. And also the fact that he had flown into into the exterior wall of our house. I know it wasn't my fault, but I was still like, oh my God, like I feel horrible. Like I was like in tears. I went out there because I was like, well, maybe he's stunned. Like maybe, you know, maybe he's going to get back up. And he didn't. And I gave him like an hour and he didn't. And I saw like the crow funeral. Cause if you guys are not familiar, like crows will have funerals. Crows are very intelligent. And so I don't know if it's all corvids or if it's just crows, but they like will have a funeral. So the crows had their funeral and I read that it was really important to give them that, you know, time because obviously, and I had messaged some of my witchy friends and I was like, oh my fucking God, like what does this mean? Because that does not feel like a good sign. And they were like, yeah, that doesn't seem like a good sign. They're like, maybe it's an accident, you know, maybe whatever. And I was like, yeah. Okay, we went back out there and like the ants were starting to get to the crow. So I knew he was dead. So I ended up giving him like a proper burial. We had bought some flowers and like, or maybe I had just had some flowers inside already. And so I buried him, I said some words, and then I laid some flowers over top of him. Unfortunately, I also read that, like, if you touch the dead body of the crow, sometimes the crow family members will associate you with the death and think you killed him. So unfortunately, I do think that happened because the crows stopped coming around. And maybe it was just that they're like, yo, that house is dangerous. Like, our buddy died there. So maybe they just, like, maybe it wasn't me, because I gave them like a good while to like have their funeral, and then that was when the bugs started getting to him, and I didn't want that to happen before I could bury him, because we have like lawn service, and I didn't want the lawn service to act disrespectfully, and I didn't know if our front house would be respectful because I didn't really know much about them at the time. So that is what I did, and the crows didn't really like us. They didn't really come around anymore, which was really sad. And I think that, like, obviously birds like represent like movement and things like that, and the fact that it had like flown into my house and died in my front yard, like in front of us, felt like a big sign. And I was kind of like, okay, like that feels like a real ending right there. And I was still like kind of like, maybe not, because I want to be in LA. I like it here, and I want to do acting. So again, this is what I'm saying, like, it didn't make sense, the whole, like, it didn't make sense why the universe would want me to leave. So I was, like, really resisting it. I was like, it doesn't fucking make sense. So I'm gonna wait and see if it means something else. And then, right, I don't know if you guys remember, but, like, there was, like, a tropical storm that was set to hit Southern California last year. So it was really crazy. Everyone was acting crazy. I had never experienced a hurricane or a tropical storm before, as have most of Southern California not, experienced that. I hadn't experienced it because I'm used to living in the Midwest, obviously. And I didn't know what to expect, but everyone was really freaking out. There was like sandbags everywhere, and I was kind of like, okay, what do we do? Like, I mean, I don't know what to do. So we kind of just like chilled. And the day before the tropical storm was set to hit, we were leaving our house to go, I don't even know, Barnes & Noble, or go somewhere. And essentially, like, our house, like I said, was a back house. And there's kind of like a path you have to walk to a gate to get to the driveway. It's like the one path to get out. You have to walk that path. In front of the gate on our side of the house was literally a dead bird. This was like 3 fucking months later, you guys. Was a dead bird with only its wings intact. The wings were connected. Everything else was gone. It was literally perfectly intact wings, and then just like fucking bones. It was so scary. Like, so at that point I was like, we're gonna die. This hurricane is gonna fucking kill us. I was so scared. I was really scared. And again, I messaged my friends. I was like, what do you guys think this means? And like, what's happening? And like, looking back, it was just, I just feel like more ending symbolism. Eventually, like, I had gotten all this symbolism. There was like so much stuff. And there's more stuff but beyond that came through in like tarot readings and other things. And eventually I had gotten to the point where like I had gotten all these signs, and I was pretty sure that, these signs were telling me to leave. And I don't know if you guys have done this, but there was like one role I auditioned for, and also like all the roles I did in LA kind of like something always, not always, but like there was one role that I did that I got paid for, and it was really fun, and I was so excited. And then the producers and everything just like ghosted everybody, and the film never got put together. Like, they were like, oh, we're still editing, no worries. And then they just ghosted everybody. And so none of the actors got their like film credits, which is a part of the compensation. Like, yes, we got paid money, but a part of the compensation is also film credits for your IMDb. And, footage for your demo reel, which is essentially what you show casting directors to be like, look, this is the work I've done. It's essentially your portfolio. So like that happened and other shit like that happened, and it was just like so flaky all the time, and like just it was just like L after L, honestly. And so it had gotten to this point where I had done this one audition, and I was like, if I don't get the role, I'm just gonna leave. Like, I'm just gonna take that as a sign. And I was really sure I would get the role, and I didn't end up getting the role. And then I was watching Ted Lasso. This is so stupid. This is so funny. I was watching Ted Lasso, and Jason Sudeikis is from Kansas City, which is where I'm from. And if you don't know, the show is like, you know, he's a soccer coach, and he is teaching in, you know, the UK, and Mrs. Home is part of it. And spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't finished it or whatever, the next 30 seconds will be a spoiler, so just skip ahead. But essentially, towards the last season, I was like, okay, if Ted Lasso leaves his job and goes home, then I'm gonna go home. And he did. And it's like, that's the thing, is like, when you're making those weird bets, and like, I don't know if that is honestly a good thing to do, but it just kind of felt right for me. So again, just all the symbolism, again, it was more so like, just things weren't working, things weren't feeling right, and it wasn't in spite of effort, because I was definitely trying really hard, but it was just like meeting brick wall after brick wall. And I've learned, just like in my, you know, since my spiritual awakening and stuff, like, sometimes there will be, you know, there will be difficult things, and you will need to work hard to get through those. But when you're facing constant resistance and like nothing's going right, no matter how hard you try and no matter how many different things you do, typically that's a sign that you need to do something else, that's not the thing to do, you know? And it was in that situation. Again, I'm not trying to say like, you know, if it doesn't work the first time, just give up, because that's definitely not it. But constant resistance, you know? So, you know, that's kind of where I was at. And I was then faced with this question of like, okay, like, I think I'm supposed to leave, but that doesn't make sense. And the realistic part of my brain is like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do in Kansas City? Like, I want to do this acting stuff and modeling, and like, it's not as big there. Like, yes, there is a market, and yes, I do have an agent, but it's certainly not the same as Los Angeles. And I essentially just kind of had to trust my intuition and kind of bite the bullet and, you know, trust the symbolism. Of course, I did some more tarot, you know, and it was all pointing to moving back home. And then I was doing my solar return chart, and I was doing it in a class, and my teacher had said like, oh, Luna, like, your solar return chart is, the ascendant is the same as your natal ascendant, which is Taurus, which oftentimes means moving home. And she had said, I'm not saying you have to move home or anything, that's just a thing that happens sometimes. And I was like, girl, no, literally, like, that's something I think I need to do. And so it was just thing after thing was like hinting me to do that. So being open to those signs, being open to that stuff, even if it doesn't make fucking sense. And yeah, you do just kind of, at the end of the day, have to trust. And like, you know, it's scary as fuck, right? And so I trusted. And so I took the steps of moving back home. Thankfully, I was able to come here and live in my parents' house for 6 months while I got my stuff together and figured out where I was moving to. And what's interesting and very validating when you trust your intuition, and it's not an immediate thing, but like once I moved here, everything started flowing so much better. It was like good fortune after good fortune. Like, things were just falling into place. And that was just validation of like, yes, you made the right decision. You know, where I was before, I was facing resistance after resistance. Nothing was working. You know, everything felt so hard and so impossible. Once I moved back home, like, everything just started falling into place. And I started getting really good opportunities. And the funniest thing, and I think the most validating thing about it all, is that I got my first SAG-AFTRA. So that is, if you don't know, the Screen Actors Guild. So all your favorite celebrities who are big are in SAG-AFTRA, and that's essentially the union for actors and filmmakers, and that's a union production. Those are the big ones. Those are the ones that will get you out there. And that's essentially what everyone's working to get a SAG-AFTRA gig. Everyone's working to get a union gig because those are the best. Those are the ones that are going to put you on radar. And so when I moved back out here, I was kind of like letting go of like needing things to be perfect or needing things to look a certain way and, you know, needing acting to be my one thing that works out. I was kind of just like, you know what, I'm an entertainer, I'm a creative person, I'm an artistic person, I'm gonna do what I can do and what I can control, and I'm gonna do my YouTube, I'm gonna write some fucking books now, you know, like I'm gonna still act and model and stuff, but there's so much I can do. And also I think it's like worth noting that like LA kind of jaded me a little bit because there was a lot of like, I don't know. There are some, if you're in the film and TV and acting industry, there is some like, yeah, just like cultural things that I'm not an ass kisser. And a lot of it really is like kissing up to people and like pretending to, you know, I don't know, just like, yeah, ass kissing, I guess, like worshiping people and like, you know, I just don't have that dog in me. I don't have that dog in me, you guys. If a script is shit, I'm not gonna fucking do it because, and that was another thing too, is like all these scripts in LA were like fucking just embarrassingly poor representations of women and sexist and just like, I just was like, this isn't art. We're not making art anymore. This is just money chasing, and that didn't jive with me. So a lot of things made me kind of step away from the industry a little bit, but it's still like I like the art, I like the performance, I like, you know, diving into a character, and I want to still do that, but it just was like, it's not worth kissing up to people and like playing fake friends to network. That's just not who I am, and it's such an energy waster. So I was like, yeah. Anyway, so once I moved back to Kansas City, I got my first SAG gig. I got this amazing fucking part where I was like able to meet all these cool people from LA who came to Kansas City, and like, you know, and thankfully Kansas City, where I'm at, like, you know, just recently passed a bunch of new laws to give these producers like tax credits and I don't know, shit like that, to where it's really attractive to film here and they have to hire local actors. So like, and that's iconic because it was literally like the universe was putting me in a better place, because, and it was like the universe knew she was like, girl, you can still do that, you can still act, and it's gonna be better here, and it's going to feel better here, and you'll have family and you'll get jobs, and it's on the rise, so it's not so saturated. And I was just so in my, and I think we all get this way, you know, so in my head of what success would look like, that I was like, I have to do it in LA where I'm unhappy. And it's like, no. And so when I got all those symbols, it didn't make sense to my logical brain. And eventually, after getting so many symbols, I had to be like, okay, it doesn't make sense to me, but it's not my job. It's not my job to understand it. And I think that's a huge part of trusting your intuition, is understanding that at the end of the day, like, you have no idea the possibilities out there. And like, if you're trying to manifest love and you're specifically looking in one place or looking for one type of person, you maybe can't even fathom like the best person for you. But if you're getting all this symbolism to fucking go to a Pilates class or something, right? And you go there and you finally meet someone who, you know, you wouldn't have met otherwise, like that was the universe redirecting you. So I know it's a silly example, but I mean, that's what I'm saying, of like, I think we get in our heads and we truly think we know what's best for ourselves, but we're only working with what we know. Like we as humans only know what we know up to this point, and that's all we're working with. So sometimes it's just best to trust that intuition, trust the universe or whatever you believe in to, you know, like lead you in a better direction, because at the end of the day, like, there wasn't a part of my brain that was like, oh yeah, no, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'll move to Kansas City and I'll get a SAG gig. That would not have crossed my mind. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just, that wasn't how I was operating. And I didn't know about I mean, those tax credit things I think happened the beginning of this year or something. So it was brand new, and it was really like, you know, I acted on this, you know, intuitive nudge at a great time, you know, and now like my agency is sending me a bunch of stuff all the time, and like there's really cool projects happening here all the time. And Kansas City is just like a really cool city and has everything we like. And so, but again, it's like I wouldn't have known that because I was stuck in that way of thinking. So trusting your intuition, it's a lot of like recognizing your hubris as a human, recognizing that you, at the end of the day, like, you know, only know what you know, and be open to those symbolisms. And even if it doesn't make sense, like, a lot of times the things we're supposed to do just like maybe don't make sense to our logical minds, but will make a lot of sense once we do it. I hope that makes sense. I know that was like, it's very esoteric and it's very much a feeling, but if you're getting a lot of continued symbolism to do something and you're like, oh, it doesn't make sense, like really feel into it, focus on the feeling, because I think like if it's resistance after resistance and everything is going wrong, there definitely is something better out there. And I'm sure that, you know, the universe and your intuition can lead you to something better, and it might not make sense. And you might be like, why though? This doesn't make any sense. Why do I need to go to a Pilates class? You know, or whatever. But you never know what could freaking happen. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope that this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed my little story time. Yeah, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to rate this podcast if you liked it. And yeah, I will see you all next time. Okay, love you guys so much. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd encourage you to stick around. I've got tons more content for you here on the podcast and over on YouTube under my name, LunaSeranova. Make sure to follow me at LunaSeranova on Instagram for everyday witchy content. And if you'd like to share your support in a super easy and free way, go ahead and rate this podcast to let others know what you thought. My books are open for tarot and astrology readings. I've just released 2 new specialty readings, the Good Witch reading and the Bad Bitch reading, each to help you connect to your higher Good Witch, Bad Bitch self. Go ahead and check out my website for more details on that. And if you're ready to up your Good Witch, Bad Bitch game with a group of fun, supportive, and loving witchy friends, you should join my Moon Fam on Patreon, and you'll get access to our group chat on Discord, our book club, and other behind-the-scenes and exclusive content that you'll only get on Patreon. All right, love, I'll see you next time. Until then, go forth in your life with the power and love of the Good Witch, Bad Bitch.